Hi candidate, welcome to another session of manifested online classes. So in this session, I want us we continue with the IPSAS 17, that is International Public Sector Accounting Standard number 17, which prescribes the accounting treatment of the property, plant and equipment. And specifically, I want us we look on a question which was tested in the sitting of December 2023. That is specifically question 1D. And then from there, we'll also give some questions which you can be able to use for your revision purpose. So let's first of all, we look on this small question, which was question 1D for December 2023. So the question reads, explain the term heritage assets as applied at the International Public Sector Accounting Standard number 17, which governs accounting recognition measurement of PPE, and give suitable examples. Number 2, describe 3 characteristics of a heritage asset. So, and that particular question had 6 marks. So what the examiner here was requiring is for the candidate to explain what are heritage assets, and number 2, to give the various characteristics of heritage asset. Now, generally, what are heritage asset? So these are those particular assets which reflect now the history, or basically which are rich in history, and also the culture, or basically the values which were observed by various ethnic group in the past. And therefore, in terms of how we can define this particular heritage asset, we can say that a heritage asset is an asset of a historical, cultural, and environmental significance, significance. So basically any asset, for example, which reflects some of the events which occurred in the past, or basically any asset which reflect now the culture and also the values which were observed by the communities in the past. Now, what are good examples of this? What are good examples of historical, not historical, rather heritage assets? So we can talk of examples of a heritage asset include number 1, we have the old buildings. We have the old buildings. So basically, this is a good example of what we refer as the historical, not historical, rather heritage asset. In other terms, you can also refer to this as historical buildings. Buildings. We can also talk of what we refer as monuments. We can also talk of what we refer as monuments. We can also talk of maybe work of art, which was basically done in the past. We can also talk of what we refer as the natural reserves. We can also talk of the conservation areas, and so on. So therefore, these are basically some of the good examples of what we refer as the heritage asset. The old or historical buildings, the monuments, the work of art, what we refer as the natural reserves, and also the conservation areas. So then from there, in Roman 2, the examiner here was requiring the candidates to give 3 characteristics, or basically to give 3 features of these particular assets, which are known as the heritage asset. And we can talk of a number of characteristics of this particular asset here. Number 1, we can talk of rarity. Rarity, basically, this comes from the word rare. Basically what this means is that this particular heritage asset, they are not readily available. In other terms, we can say they are very what? They are rare. So we can say the heritage assets are rare, i.e. they are not readily available. Basically, before you come across a heritage asset, basically, or in other terms, we say these particular heritage assets. Heritage assets, they are not what? They are not readily available. Number two is that this particular heritage asset, they are rich in history. They are rich in what? History. Basically, this particular heritage asset, they reflect some of the events which occurred in what? In the past and so on. So therefore, in this case, we can talk of historical significance. And we say that they reflect some of the events which occurred in the past, which occurred in what? In the past. So that is basically the other characteristic or the other feature of this particular what? Heritage asset, that they are what? They are rich in history, because now they tend to reflect some of the events which occurred in what? In the past. And also number three, we can talk of a cultural value. Cultural value means what? Some of these particular historical assets, they embody, or basically they reflect some of the culture, or basically some of the values which were observed by some of the ethnic groups in what? In the past. So we can say they embody the values and practices observed by ethnic groups in the past. So therefore, these are some of the features, or basically some of the characteristics of the heritage asset. Number one, we have said they are very rare. Number two, they are of significance or historical significance. They basically reflect a lot of events which occurred in the past, and also they have some cultural what? Value. So basically some of them show the values, some of the practices which were observed by some of the ethnic groups in what? In the past. So that basically what the candidates here are required to do, basically to explain three features, or basically three characteristics of this particular heritage asset. And basically by doing that, explaining what is a heritage asset, giving examples of heritage asset, and also giving some of the features, the candidates were getting what? We're getting 6 marks. Then as we wind up, I want to give some questions here for which will help you for your revision purpose. So, and I can read, it reads, in context of IPSAS 17, International Public Sector Accounting number 17, describe the following. Number one, the criteria for recognition of property, plant and equipment, 4 marks. Roman 2, initial measurement of PPE, that is property, plant and equipment. And number 3, you are also required to describe, or basically to give the disclosure requirement of the PPE, and we have 6 marks there. So make sure as you go through the video, basically what you have covered in our previous session, you then attempt those particular questions. So that brings us to the end of that particular session, and what you have been able to cover there is the provisions of IPSAS 17, which generally we have said is a standard regarding the recognition, the measurement, and the accounting treatment of the property, plant, and equipment. So see you in the next session as we look on the other international public accounting standard.